Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 962 of our daily content grind, and we are back to our top 10 of the year list, and we are up to 1992. At this point, Transformers was completely dead in the United States, not a single new figure to be produced, and even Japan was giving up on it, with a pittance of new offerings, when Takara was more focused on their brand new Brave franchise. So it's up to Europe to carry the ball. And in an interesting thing, we're kind of in a similar situation to my 1984 list, where there's so few toys to talk about. There's actually more toys on the list than there are left off of the list. Kind of funny how that works out, but then again, 1992 is one of those really funny years for this franchise. So we've got just enough new molds to talk about and make a brand new top 10 list out of, so without further ado, welcome to the best Transformers of 1992, and of course, we are starting with number 10, and I'm going to tell you guys right now, the small Decepticon jets this year are not really going to factor much into this list. I find most of their transformations very samey, usually flip nose cone up, collapsed legs, and that's it. And I usually find their bright color scheme somewhere right in the middle between used as a highlight and an accent, or going so far out in the fields with it that it turns around and becomes awesome again. That's your Action Master Thundercracker for you. Right in the middle, it's more obnoxious than interesting. Falcon avoids a lot of that, however. So the muted sea green color scheme definitely works and stands out amongst his super bright brethren, and it actually plays well with the other colors he's got going on. The neon green works as a highlight while still feeling like it belongs in the color scheme, and the light blue works as well. It's a really nice multi-shaded figure and looks really nice. The other bright highlights to it are kept just as that, just little highlights of that Euro G1 color that we tend to expect. He's got a few other things going on for him. One, his transformation scheme is a little bit different. He's got a little bit more going on. He has a stealth jet vehicle mode, which I think is way more interesting than the other fighter jets that the other ones use. And strangely enough, he seems to be the only Decepticon out of this entire batch that avoided having a mouth plate. All the others have some kind of mouth plate. He's the only one with a full face. Doesn't necessarily make him a better toy, but it definitely makes him stand out just a little bit. So yes, a little on the simple side, but not quite as simple as his brethren. And at the very least, out of those jets, I think he's the one that deserves a nod on this list. Opposing the Decepticon Predator jets were the Autobot Turbo Masters. And these are a little bit more simple, but they are still interesting figures with a lot of interesting ways of kind of matching up certain colors, the accessories, etc. All kind of focused in on one gimmick of having a giant engine built into the toy that could be removed for a missile launcher. Fun little figures. Not the most complex Transformers, but certainly interesting. And one of the ones I really like out of it is Scorch. There's something really fascinating about Scorch as a figure because he feels like a cleaned up Trailbreaker in some weird ways. He doesn't have the same kibble issues or backpack going on. He has very similar features with the windshield chest and the big pot belly made from the front end of the truck. But he avoids a lot of the pitfalls that the original toy had. And still manages to look kind of interesting. It's a super hot color scheme. There's red, there's yellow, there is orange, and it's accented by the flame job that is present in both modes. And that blue just kind of tones him down just a little bit to make him a little bit more interesting color scheme-wise. It's weird. I just like the figure in general. And I also kind of like how all of the other Turbo Masters kind of use that engine as some kind of big heavy turbo engine in the vehicle mode, whereas he's just content to use it as like some anti-aircraft weaponry, So credit to him. He's doing something unique with the gimmick. He's just a fun figure. There's charm. I think that's what it comes down to. There's just a lot of charm to him. For something that just could have been as simple as Trailbreaker, I think he sings. I think he has a lot more to him that just kind of makes me focus in on him a lot. So, yeah, Scorch is going to get a nod from me. I like him a lot. Now, I will be honest with you. A lot of the toys that we've been doing for this are toys that I have never had full access to. If I've got in-hand experience, it's because someone let me mess with it at a convention or something. Or I am literally just pulling from what I can gather from images and videos to determine how good the toy is. Admittedly, when the toys get this rare years like this, I don't really have a whole lot of personal experience. It's next to impossible to do so. However, I do have quite a few of these Euro G1 toys. So when I tell you Boss is my favorite of all the basic figures, I have full hands-on experience. I can see mine from here. He's a really, really cool figure. Once again, he's avoiding a lot of the extreme color schemes that Euro G1 is typically known for. He's got a two-tone blue thing going on that works, and that the pink translucence really kind of hit well as a hot highlight color to him. Even the bits of yellow are not unwelcome. Beyond that, it's just a cool design. You love seeing that big turbo engine right in the front. It is very like Tim Burton Batmobile in design, which I feel like is completely intentional, especially when he does have a little bit of Batman element to his head design as well. I think everyone has kind of noticed that parallel over the years. He's kind of the closest we've gotten to a Batmobile Transformer. Beyond that, he's just a cool design, you know? He's very traditional in his stylings, but he did a couple things that were unique to him. The front fenders of the vehicle trailing backward, did that a long time before drift ever made it cool. So, very cool figure. Very cool figure. I really like the overall look of him and the vehicle mode. The vehicle mode has so much personality to it. I absolutely love it. Out of all of these Turbo Masters and and Predators, these basic class figures that we got this year, Boss absolutely has to be my favorite. For number 7, we got to go up a size scale. We got to talk about one of the other Predators, because it wasn't just basic jets. Pretty much all the Decepticons in 92 were kind of in the same exact subgroup. And one of the bigger figures was Stalker, a mold that some of you are going to know better as Machine Wars Soundwave. Which, okay, yeah, the head is weirdly similar, but obviously everything else drastically different. The big, bright missile truck that is not stealthy in the slightest. This is again one of those color schemes that I think goes so far into the ridiculous, it turns around and becomes kind of interesting again. So I'm not going to knock it for its super bright colors. It is kind of a simplistic figure, but it's kind of neat and fun in its own way. I had someone send me the Machine Wars version for Plastic Addict one time, promising me that, yeah, you're going to hate this thing. And no, for the time it was produced, I think it was actually a pretty neat little figure. It helps that this also came with a pretty interesting gimmick. So the missile is actually a big view scope. So something about the Predators that I didn't mention, they come with little chips. They come with little chips that when you attach them onto the top of this, actually lets a scene be viewed through it, almost like a Viewmaster, which is a super interesting gimmick to include in a set of figures, and like you see on the screen right here, gives them an element of combination, weirdly enough. So that's kind of why a lot of those basic jets were a little bit more simple. They were accommodating this gimmick as well, and Stalker was the affordable way of incorporating that into something and getting more play value out of it. So, overall neat figure. Maybe not the most complicated, but it's got enough interesting little things going on that I can't help but like it. Alright, it's time to tag in Takara and look at some of the stuff that they had for offer in 1992. Like I said, it is very, very little. They were basically continuing the Micromasters, and they wanted to continue combining. So, they introduced a few more of the combining Micromaster teams, similar to the trains we talked about last time. However, here, we have a lot more variety, and we have some new interesting tricks. We're going to start with Sixt Builder, who only makes it this low on the list because I find the color scheme a little bit too all over the place. I think there's a lack of focus here, and there's no real predominant colors here that really give him an identity here. But that said, you do have a nice bit of variety here with a lot of different types of construction vehicles. You basically have a miniature set of Constructicons that you can play with and mess around with, which, you know, having them all be thematically the same whilst having a visual difference between them really helps in the variety's sake and makes it a more fun set, in my opinion. As you can see, this is where the really brilliant advent of these came in. You can actually combine all of the combiner kibble into a big jet for one of them to drive, which I think is a really cool way of utilizing all of that extra junk. It's something they should have thought of all the way back in 1985 when combiners started to be a more common thing in the franchise. But no, they waited until literally the last year they were producing G1 toys in Japan. But you know what? I'll take it whenever I can get it here. So, it's a nice set, but color scheme choices, I think, are keeping it down from being a little bit higher on the list. We'll see what it takes a little bit later on to get higher up as a combiner team. We do have another one to talk about, and you will excuse me if the image on this is not great because, frankly, the G1 Micromaster Combiners are an exceptionally difficult set of toys to get your hands on. There's not a whole lot of photography of them. So when we talk about Six Wing, the team of 6 jets, then you will have to forgive me in the fact that, yeah, we have to go off the picture from the back of his box. So, of course, most people know these as the Micromaster Combiners that were KB Toy exclusives during Universe. So a lot of people have actually had experience with this despite how rare it is. Now here we have a more unified color scheme. I think the stickers might go a little bit heavy. They're doing a little bit too much to try and break it up. But I think it looks better than Six Builder. He does have a knock against him because it's 6 jets. And you can tell where like the legs are basically the same figure. So he does have a little bit of limitation to him as far as variety goes. But if you just want a big fleet of jets, you have that in one gift box, no less. Also, this does make the combiner kibble a little bit more thematic since, of course, it turns into a jet as well. Now, you will notice it's the same combiner kibble outside of the head. That was kind of the trick to these. They all kind of use the same combiner kibble. But that not only meant that you could mix and match those parts between the sets however you wanted, it also meant that some of these figures were actually interchangeable and had a little bit of Scramble City aspect to them. If you could form a leg on one, you could form a leg on the others, outside of the trains that were engineered differently. It's a nice little play pattern to introduce when you start getting multiple versions of these going around. And yeah, even though I could use a little bit more variety, can't deny. Full set of jets is a cool thing to have. And yeah, it does look a little bit better than Six Builder. So Six Wing gets to make it to the middle of the list. There's one more to talk about, but we will save that for just a few minutes from now, because we have to go back over to the UK, who produced a really, really cool figure that, crazy enough, is also an aerial vehicle. Let's talk about Rotor Storm, the answer to Stalker. This is a really good looking figure. Again, you've got a two-tone blue color scheme that works with the yellows and the pinks. The silver is a really nice accent for the cockpit and then the chest. It's just a really, really strong color scheme. I really like how Rotor Storm looks. And yeah, it's just a really cool attack helicopter. Transformer helicopters tend to kind of suffer in one way or another. This one pulls off a really strong figure, and having first-hand experience with other versions of this mold, I really like how it transforms as well. It's a surprisingly fun figure for something that's got, a good bit of age to it at this point. Not to mention, yes, firing missile gimmicks from 2 massive launchers that both become individual guns in robot mode. Works really, really well. I like the gimmick that drops them from being actual engines into attack position. That's a cool little trick too. Yeah, I mean, again, basic sometimes works. I don't need super complex gimmicks. I don't need super, involved transformations. Sometimes it's nice to just do the efficient thing and just come up looking as solid as possible. Rotor Storm definitely does that. Probably the most what I would call normal looking transformer out of the Euro G1s. But in that, he still comes across really, really strong. I really, really like the figure. And at some point, maybe track the original down. Maybe. Until then, I've got the modern one. I'm happy with that. And yeah, I'm just happy knowing this is a nice, nice figure for 92. Now we get to finish it off. So technically, 4 Micromaster Combiners came out in Japan in 1992. However, one of them was a repaint of the trains, so I can't include him on this list. However, that leaves us with one, and that is Sixt Turbo. So, Here I kind of feel like we've kind of fixed a lot of what went wrong in the other two. There's enough colors that kind of work together and are unified in order to make him look a lot more solid and a lot more traditional combiner in the robot mode. You know, there aren't weird colors sticking out. It doesn't look as overly done. The stickers are the exact same way. It doesn't look like they overkilled it. They have a nice balance to them. They look more like a traditional combiner's look. Top that off on the fact that you are getting a ton of variety. This team is relatively mishmashed because you've got an Indy car and a sports car along with, 4 rescue vehicles, including a motorcycle you can't see in this photo. But that does give you a lot of play value, gives you a lot of nice variety, and hey, MicroMaster motorcycle, not really something I thought you'd see. Takara pulled it off and made it part of a combiner, no less. And all the unified colors, I think, makes the best looking of the jet modes for these guys as well. So yeah, I think there's a big reason why when all of these were imported from Japan, this is the color, this is the one they touch the least. Sixt Turbo basically looks like Universe Defensor. And rightfully so. It's a really nice looking team, a really nice bot. Lots of play variety, just overall, yeah, the best of the MicroMaster combiners. Europe is going to finish off this list for the top 2 positions, and again, it's really just a matter of who went where, but if you know which 2 figures are left out of the UK, this is not a surprise in the least. So we're going to start with Quake. The toy is just huge, big, imposing. Again, not the most complex Transformer, but what it does do is exceptionally cool. Once again, you have the scope combination gimmick that works on him as well. Admittedly, the gold plastic makes it a little bit scary to do, but just leave that alone. Leave that alone. We're not terribly worried about fragility on these, because most of the Decepticons use gold plastic. We are just more concerned like how good are the toys and how good do they look. He is, again, one of those weird color schemes. He's all the seafoam green and like bright pink and copper. It's a really weird color scheme, but it kind of oddly works when it shouldn't. It's bizarre in that, but I think it's also fascinating in that way and stands out a lot. And then you've got a really fun gimmick. So all of these toys kind of came with like small missile launcher style gimmicks. In fact, you'll notice most of them use the same missile launchers amongst the Decepticons. However, the bigger toys incorporated them in different ways. And in him, he could carpet bomb. Like in vehicle mode, you crank the engine in the back and he just drops bomb after bomb after bomb after bomb, which is a really cool trick. It's a simple trick, but it's a really cool trick. And overall, just a really fun toy. Like the vehicle mode. Like, I don't just mean, in robot mode, he's imposing. In vehicle mode, he is imposing. He's one of the coolest, like, most awesome jets. Trying to keep it YouTube friendly. One of the most awesome jets that you have in Transformers. He just looks amazing. Yeah, I love Quake. I love this mold in all of its iterations. But, obviously, due to obvious reasons, this one definitely stands out. And that leaves us to number 1, and there should be absolutely no surprise. If you know your Euro G1 and you know your 1992 Transformers, there's only one toy that could top this list. We need to talk about Thunderclash. Like most of you, my experience with this figure comes largely from Machine Wars Optimus Prime, which not only really tries to cram Optimus Prime into a mold that only kind of works for it, but at the very least does away with the gold plastic that can make this one a little bit scary to mess with. But that aside, awesome looking truck. I mean, for something that's going for like a slight homage to Optimus Prime, but still trying to do its own thing, I think Thunderclash pulls it off very, very well. I mean, you've got the traditional stripe shape, but none of the colors. Everything looks just like a super high-tech tractor trailer. You got the cab that is drastically different, and even though it has a similar, like, Power Master Prime transformation, comes up really unique in the end. And then that tower mode. I will admit, at this point, it's kind of boring to have so many of these trailers just explode into ramps and little battle platforms, and things that cars can drive onto. it was cool to get a tower. You know, it was cool to just get something that's like super tall and just has like, it's just ready for combat. In this one in particular, there's a gravity drop system to its missile launcher. So as soon as you fire one missile, it drops the next missile into position and it's ready to fire again. How cool is that? How cool is that? That's such a cool trick. That's such a cool trick. And yeah, it just makes them so much more unique of having like a vertical battle platform as opposed to a horizontal one and a flat one. So much more interesting. So yeah, I have no problem with saying, yeah, Thunder Clash, absolutely my toy of 1992. Even though I technically played with the US version. And that's going to do it. Those are your top 10 toys of 1992. Like I said, there's not a whole lot left off the list. And that bottom part of the list is absolutely up to interpretation and your opinion. But honestly, this is one of the few lists I'm really confident in, mostly because it's such a thin pool to pick from. But 1993 is going to be more interesting. I am left with a dilemma that I want some help with. So, 1993 is the launch of G2. Transformers will finally hit US shelves again and never leave them. And that means they're going to be relying on a lot of repaints and a lot of imported Euro G1 toys. So, I will leave it up to you. Should I include the repaints in the year and actually focus on just flat out what the best Transformers of 1993 are, or should I stick to the format I've been going with and exclude figures from previous years and focus only on brand new ones? No, admittedly, it might be a thinner list, but I want to leave the option up to you. So leave that in the comments below. If you made it all the way to this point, I thank you very much. And as always, I will see you next time.